This week's Parsha is Tisa, which is the 21st Parsha of the Torah, and it is the 9th Parsha in the book of Shemot. And in this week's Parsha, we have a few different events that occur, the main one being the Jewish people's construction of the golden calf. Before I get there, I'll talk about a couple of the other things that happen, but that is the main thing of this week's Parsha. Now, at the very beginning of the Parsha, we have the census of the Jewish people. God tells Moses that we need to count the Jewish people to see what the numbers of the population currently are. And the way that we were supposed to count the Jewish people is not by saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but by the Jewish people each contributing a coin to the construction and maintenance of the tabernacle, which we just talked about the construction of it a little bit in the past couple of weeks, but that's the way that we are supposed to count the Jewish people, not by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The idea sort of being that the Jewish people are a collective religion, and we're not supposed to sort of like single people out. So by giving of a coin, once you count up all of the coins, you would still know how many people there are by doing the math. Now Hashem also tells Moses who should be in charge of constructing the tabernacle and all of the sacred items that are inside of the tabernacle. And Hashem picks two people. He picks Bezalel and Aholiav to make the items for the temple. Now Bezalel is only 13 years old, which is quite impressive and amazing that he was the one out of all of the people who were able to do construction and building and all of the craftsmen that he was chosen. But it goes to show, as we've talked about in previous weeks, that age really doesn't matter when it comes to the Torah, that young people can be very strong and can be leaders, and in addition, old people can be as well. But not to overlook somebody just because of their age. If that's the person with the skills, if that's the person with the ability, if that's the person with the correct values, then we should choose them even if they happen to be 13 years old. And I think that's something really nice that we can take away from this week's Parsha. Then after that, we sort of get into the main event, which again is the building, I guess, of the golden calf. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, the Jews are now in the desert. They are in the desert with Moses as their leader. And God, a couple weeks ago, we saw in the Parsha that the Jewish people received the 10 Commandments. Now, in Judaism, there's sort of an idea that the Torah is not necessarily chronological. So in this week's Parsha, we have Moses going up to the mountain, going on Har Sinai, to receive the 2 tablets with the 10 Commandments from God. And Moses ascends the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And he told the people ahead of time that's how long he was going to be gone. But the people miscalculated. They assumed that when he said 40 days and 40 nights, he was counting the day that he left. But Moses wasn't. That day was not included in the count. So at the end of this time, at the end of these 40 days, as the people counted, when Moses didn't return, the people were hysterical. The people were really unsure of what to do. He had been their leader. They were sure he wasn't coming back. And they turned to Aaron and asked Aaron to make them an idol. They asked Aaron to make them something that could sort of be their intermediary with God. In the way that Moses talked to God and relayed the messages back to them, they were looking for somebody to replace Moses, and what they were looking for was an idol. And Aaron, who is a very righteous man, he becomes the first Kohen Gadol, the high priest of the tabernacle, the temple service, and so we know he's a righteous man, so whatever his actions would have been with a good intention. But what we see in the commentary, why they suggest that Aaron assisted in making this golden calf, was first to buy time. He assumed that by the time he told all the people to give him their gold and their jewelry, and he assumed by the time that happened, for sure Moses would be back. And when Moses didn't come back by that time, because the people were so eager and so scared, they were so ready to have something new, somebody there to talk, to be their intermediary with God, the people gave him their gold right away without hesitation, and Aaron was not expecting that. And the commentators also suggest that Moses had left Aaron and another man in charge, and that when the other man told the Jewish people, you can't make an idol, that they killed him. And Aaron didn't want the sin of the Jewish people to be greater. If they killed Aaron as well, what good would that do them? And they would still make their idol, and they would have the sin of killing Aaron in addition to their punishment. So the next thing, so first Aaron again tells them to give him their gold jewelry. Aaron makes an altar for the idol for sacrifices, for offerings, and Aaron throws the gold into the fire and assumes a blob is going to come out, and the people aren't going to worship a blob, but instead emerges this golden calf. And now at this point, Aaron has done what he can, Moses still is not back, and the people begin to worship this idol that they have created. And they not only do they worship the idol, but some of them are dancing and rejoicing over this new idol. God gives word of this to Moses while he's still on the mountain, and Moses sort of can hear the people and returns down, sees that they're dancing with the idol, and he smashes the tablets. And he smashes the tablets with the 10 Commandments, saying that the people are not ready, and he's angry, but also he sees that the people are not ready to receive the holiness from God. So Moses smashes the tablets and returns to the people, and the people automatically sort of see what they did wrong, and the people who actually worshipped, not everybody actually worshipped the idol, but the people who did really worship the idol are killed, and then Moses has to intercede on behalf of the Jewish people with God. Moses has to sort of plead to God that he should allow the Jewish people to continue to live. God is angry, obviously. God is angry that the people who he just took out of Egypt, who just saw all of these miracles of God's, like the amazing wonders he did for them in their exodus from Egypt, and now just, what, one day without Moses, and now they're making an idol. So God is upset. But Moses has to, again, intercede on behalf of the Jewish people and convinces God not to annihilate them, not to wipe them out as a nation. And what we see from that is Moses' amazing holiness as a person, that he's up there and he can sort of argue or have a conversation with God. And God, at the end of this week's Parsha, shows Moses his back. Now, we don't really understand what that means, showing Moses his back, but God lets Moses have a glimpse of his presence. And after this time, when Moses comes back with the second set of tablets, Moses again goes up to Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights, and God gives him a new set of tablets, and when he brings them back to the Jewish people, his face is now radiant from seeing the presence of God, and whenever he's not teaching over laws to the Jewish people, he now wears like a mask or a veil to cover his face from this light, this aura that was around him. And something interesting about that is they say, like, the commentators suggest that when Moses was born, the room filled with light, and now here again, Moses has this light around him of holiness, and that's kind of cool. But what I think we can learn from the experience of the golden calf is that sometimes we will see like fake news, or we'll hear gossip, and it's so easy to spread. I tell one person something, and I think that they're trustworthy, and they tell another person, and suddenly everybody knows. And it's kind of like the golden calf. The people start to be worried, and they build on each other's excitement and on each other's hysteria of not having this intermediary between themselves and between God. And they quickly, everybody becomes very worried. And it's sort of the same thing with gossip or with sort of fake news, that we see something and we think it must be true, and we don't use our higher emotional intelligence, we don't use our reasonable thinking to really process the facts and think, oh, could this be true? Could this be made up? Could this just be gossip? Or is there something really there? We don't make the time to do our own research and our own investigation, and I think that's where we can turn to something like the Jews did with the golden calf. And the Jews, again, who had just witnessed this great miracle, they just saw these amazing things, but they're so quick to have doubts and they're so quick to have fear. So I think also if we, instead of responding quickly, take time to think and take time to process and take time to do our own reflections, then that could be something really valuable for us. So I hope you all have a wonderful week and a Shabbat Shalom.